Welcome to Therapy Shorts 52. Today we're going to be talking about codependency and some of the uncomfortable truths that codependents don't like to hear. So today's Therapy Shorts is codependency is all about control, and it took me personally years to come out of denial about that. So let me tell you about something I learned the hard way, and something that many codependents never want to admit or hear. Codependency isn't kindness. It's fear dressed up as care. And fear dressed up as care becomes control. It's not loud control as you'd associate with narcissists. It's not aggressive control. And it's not the kind of that people write about in self-help books and blogs. I'm talking about quiet control, invisible control. Control hidden inside, I was just trying to help. Control wrapped up in emotional attunement. Control disguised as being the strong one, the reliable one, the one who holds it all together. And if that feels uncomfortable to hear, that's good, because exactly where growth starts. So let's talk about the truth that I personally didn't want to see. For a long time, I would never have described myself as controlling. In fact, I would have used the opposite language entirely. Caring, supportive, reliable, available, emotionally attuned, the one who held everything together. Like many people who identify as codependent, I wore those traits like a badge of honor. But here's a truth I had to face personally. Codependency is built on control. Soft, quiet, invisible control. And it took me years to admit it. People hear control and they picture raised voices, psychological games, emotional intimidation. But codependent control looks nothing like that. It arrives wearing a gentle tone and, oh, don't worry, I'll handle it smile. It presents as kindness. It sounds like helplessness. It's carried out under the banner of love. But beneath that polished exterior lies something much more primitive. Fear of abandonment, fear of disapproval, fear of not being needed, fear of emotional chaos, fear of being replaced, rejected, or criticized. And fear, when left unexamined, always tries to control the environment. Always. And no amount of kindness changes that. If you identify as codependent, you may recognize these patterns. You fix, you soothe, you anticipate. You manage the moods in the room. You smooth the edges. You step in before there's a problem. You rescue before the other person even asks. It feels like you're being supportive, but truthfully, you're shaping the emotional landscape so it stays predictable, so nothing erupts, nothing falls apart, and you don't feel that crushing internal panic. When I finally let myself see this dynamic, I realized something sobering. I wasn't helping people because I was generous. I was helping people because I was terrified. That's the part nobody talks about, the part that most codependents deny. Because admitting that means facing that your niceness was never as pure as you believed. It was survival dressed up as selflessness. I don't say that to shame anyone. I say it with deep compassion for that part of me and the part of so many others that learned early on that safety only existed when everything was under control. So where does this pattern come from? No one wakes up one morning and decides to be codependent. No one chooses to hide their needs, manage everybody else's emotions, or shapeshift to keep the peace. This pattern is learned. It comes from childhood environments where you had to anticipate a parent's emotional state, caretake for an adult who couldn't regulate themselves, suppress your needs to avoid conflict or rejection, become the good one, the quiet one, or the responsible one, and keep the home running to avoid chaos. Your nervous system learned the rule: if I manage everything, I will stay safe. And as an adult, that survival rule gets repackaged as caretaking, generosity, loyalty, empathy, and being the strong one. It's not malicious, it's not conscious, but it is control. So why is soft control still control? Here are the subtle forms, the ones codependents rarely recognize. Emotional regulation of others. You adjust your behavior instantly to calm someone else. It feels like attunement, but it's controlling the emotional climate. Overfunctioning. You take responsibility for everything. It looks like competence. It is control described as reliability. Rescuing and fixing. You swoop in before the others have a chance to fail, grow, or stand alone. The hidden motive, if I save you, you won't leave me. Self-silencing, you edit yourself into something more palatable so no one gets upset. That's manipulating the relational tone. And preemptive adaptation. You adjust your tone, preferences, personality, and presence based on micro-reactions. You disappear yourself in order to control the outcome. And the tragedy is this: you disappear and then wonder why the relationship feels empty. So what's the cost of living this way? Codependent control doesn't look harmful, but it quietly destroys your inner world. You lose your identity. You attract partners who enjoy being carried. You feel exhausted, but keep performing anyway. You develop resentment, but never voice it. You feel emotionally unsafe unless you're needed. You live in chronic anxiety. And worst of all, you never, ever actually experience intimacy. Because real intimacy requires being seen, and control requires staying hidden. So what do you need to come out of denial? It personally took me years to see this clearly. Years to realise that my so-called kindness was often fear-driven management. Years to admit that I wasn't just supportive, I was orchestrating outcomes so I wouldn't feel that dark pit of abandonment. The turning point was brutally simple. I asked myself why I was helping. Was it generosity or fear? Was it love or control? Was I giving or was I buying safety? Most days the answer was uncomfortable, but honesty was the doorway to freedom. So healing means letting people carry themselves. Recovery begins when you stop managing every emotional crack and allow others to feel their feelings, handle their problems, make their own decisions, disappoint you, and stand on their own 2 feet. And when you stop disappearing to keep everyone else comfortable. Letting go is not abandonment, it's respect for them and for yourself. I asked myself the question, in all of the years that I'd been codependent and couldn't handle it, I asked myself, okay, what have I been denying myself? And I realised that the real cure to codependency is individuality, and it's a real antidote to codependency as well. So it isn't about better communication or saying no more often, though these things help, but they don't heal the core wound. The real cure to codependency is reclaiming individuality, because most codependents lose themselves long before adulthood. They become who others need them to be. They adapt to the emotional climate of the home. They shrink, soften, shapeshift, or silence themselves to protect fragile caregivers. And their identity becomes a collage of other people's wants and expectations. So of course, codependency thrives in the absence of a self. If you don't know who you are, you'll use relationships to find out. If you don't feel anchored, you'll attach for stability. And if you don't trust your own voice, you'll borrow somebody else's. And if you don't have a defined identity, you'll control the relationship to maintain safety. Healing begins when you reverse the equation. Stop asking, who do I need to be for them? And start asking, who am I when nobody's looking? Because individuality looks like this. Having opinions without checking with somebody else. Wanting things for yourself, not for approval. Letting others be disappointed. Treating your emotions as valid. Maintaining preferences that don't bend. Building a life that reflects your values. And speaking up even when your voice tells you not to. The more solid your sense of self, the less you feel compelled to manage, fix, or control others. You no longer need relationships to complete you because you're already whole. And here's the deepest, most controversial thing. Codependency collapses when identity strengthens. Control dissolves when you stop needing others to regulate your inner world. Love finally becomes real when you stop disappearing to earn it. So codependency isn't malice, it's fear. But fear doesn't have to run your relationships. When you reclaim individuality, you no longer need to control the emotional environment. You become grounded, visible, present, and capable of love that doesn't require self-erasure. Thank you for listening, and more next time.